Hey, Jen.
Hey, Dana. Hi, everyone.
Welcome to Hypnosis.
And beyond.
We are thrilled to speak today with our guest, Surinder Gill, who is a certified master practitioner and trainer of NLP. Hey, Surinder. Thank you for joining us on Hypnosis and Beyond. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've
Excellent.
been looking forward to this.
Surinder, I had the pleasure of taking your practitioner training, the NLP, in Brockville, your hometown, just over a month ago. So it's just great to have you here. What led you into the NLP and hypnosis world?
Well, I'm going to make a long story short. So I was a police officer for 24 years. In 2014, as a sergeant, I decided to retire because my wife and I were involved in retail businesses, restaurants, and we had 2 ice cream stores. I wanted to expand until we got to 6 locations. And in the summertime, we'd be over 50 employees. And that's when I realized that I would much rather teach other people how to create systems and grow their retail operations rather than be the one doing it himself. I thought there was an opportunity to become a consultant. And so I took an NLP course, not really knowing what I was getting into. And that's it. It rocked my world because I realized that I could work with people one-on-one, help them with so many things, anxiety and people with panic attacks and people who have smoking habits and people who want to lose weight. I started to help people for free. It worked way better than I thought it would. And then I took a hypnosis course and I started to use hypnosis in conjunction with NLP, and I've never looked back. So now I see clients pretty much every day and I do NLP trainings. So I didn't take my NLP practitioner course thinking that I was going to be an NLP practitioner. I thought I was collecting some information that I could then use to help business owners grow from one specifically retail operation to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5.
What the heck is NLP? Could you define that for us?
Neuro refers to what's going on in your brain because we create our meanings to life events through our senses. And we only have 5. We see things, we smell things, we taste things, we feel things, hear things. And then, of course, our 6th sense, which is our little voice in our head that's always talking. And then we create something in our mind, which in NLP we refer to as an IR, or an internal representation. And so that's the neuro part. The linguistic part refers to the fact that we must use language in order to assign meanings. Otherwise, we'd have no way of communicating with ourselves and with other people. And because we rely so heavily on language, the power that's in those words is beyond what most people are taught. Okay. And because we use words in this patternistic way and we think in a patternistic way, which I described earlier, which is the neuro part, we put information through our filters and through our senses, we create internal representations. We use language to do that. We become predictable. So in other words, we live out programs. Sometimes we go through life and we think that we are taking responsibility for our outcomes because we're consciously engaged with everything that we're doing. What we're not paying as much attention to, oftentimes, not for everybody, but for many people, myself at one time included, was what's going on unconsciously. How am I comparing new information to old information that's causing me to create these internal representations in a very predictable way? That's the programming. It's that if we keep doing the same thing and we keep thinking the same way, we will keep producing the same results. And if we're not happy with them, then we have to change the programming. I always try to give a really concise explanation for NLP, and sometimes it doesn't come out quite as quickly as I would like, but that one is right on the borderline.
Amazing.
Is that okay? All right, good.
So,
I'm great.
when I was first introduced to the idea of NLP, I looked up online and there was a lot of different information out there, and some of it was quite negative. I recently listened to a podcast called Hypnotherapy Unleashed, and Dr. David Spiegel, he's a neuroscientist at Stanford, was asked about the correlation between NLP and hypnosis. And I just want to quote him. He said, "I don't buy it. I'm not a big fan of NLP, in part because it's sort of a manipulative, and it's like, I'm going to outsmart this guy and get him to do it." I was just wondering how you would respond to that.
So I did listen to that podcast. And so here's what I think. First of all, I don't really disagree with anything that Dr. Spiegel said when I listened to the podcast in its entirety. If somebody gave me that tiny little snippet only, then I would say, well, I disagree with what he's saying. My opinion is this. There are people out there that will attempt to learn something so that they can use it against other people and then do something to that person and to attempt to manipulate that person. And because NLP is also a business, look at me, I'm an NLP trainer, and that's how I make a living. Sometimes people can make these grandiose claims of what you can do. And there's certain people that are turned on by that, and there's certain people that are turned off by that. I happen to be a person who's turned off by that. I think that NLP is really, really useful if you think of it as a way of being persuasive, not only with other people, but also with yourself. So you can control your IRs, your internal representations, and you can control your emotions. Because when you can control your emotions and you combine them with better IRs, you assign better meanings, which lead to better behaviors, which produce better results. I don't see how that could be a bad thing. I do think, though, that if you learn it to manipulate, then there's a potential that you could utilize some of this information to further your own cause, but really you're not. Jennifer, you were in my course. How many times did I say to everybody in the class that, listen, all of this material is incredibly useful. Let's use it for good. Let's use it to make our lives better, the lives of our families, the lives of our students, of our clients, of everybody that we touch. And if you have nothing but positivity inside you and that's what you want to spread, then you can do some pretty miraculous things with the tools of NLP. Dr. Spiegel did say something along the lines of, I use the concepts of NLP and they're very useful. So he uses the concepts, and he also talks about hypnosis in a very similar way. After he talked about that little bit about NLP, he then went on to talk about hypnosis and about how he doesn't like when hypnotists put themselves on a pedestal. I think he used the word aggrandizement, where you have this vision of yourself and then you try to put yourself on a pedestal and then you must come back to me because I am the one that can hypnotize you. And his view is, no, that's a suggestible state. You can get to that state on your own. You could learn to meditate. You could calm down your nervous system. You can learn how to create visualizations in your mind that open up possibility. And that's what he's all about. And I'm about that too. One of the things I tell my clients is, look, my goal is to put you through my breakthrough so that you have what you need inside you to create better results in that area of life. Then you won't need me. I think what he's really all about is this idea that I have something on you, you don't know it, and now I'm going to trick you. He doesn't like that. I don't like that either. Does that answer your
that
question?
really demystifies it. Coming from an expert like yourself and just breaking it down that way is very helpful. One thing I noticed about your training was that you had two very special people there, your son and daughter. You've introduced NLP into your family life. And what was it like before and after introducing NLP in your house?
So one of the things that happens when you do a really good NLP intervention is you will move from effect to cause. Meaning, instead of being a person that blames their environment, their boss, their circumstances, their sex, the color of their skin, whatever they can, you tend to not do that anymore because you tend to really understand that you're creating your own reality with your thoughts. And so one thing that's changed is I have a family dynamic now that is far more at cause, not only me, but everybody, because we kind of live, eat, and breathe this now, and it makes everything better. It makes family vacations better. Everybody's going to have little trials and tribulations in life. We get past them more quickly and more easily. We're more interested in just creating positive energy around other people and not being so fixated on getting something from someone else. Because you learn that if you give it away, you get it. If you give away positivity and unconditional love everywhere you go, well, then you get to feel it. That's the secret of how to feel any positive emotion. You want to feel it, give it away. It's changed everything. I will share a funny little story with you, though. There was a time where I was standing in the kitchen about 3 years ago. We were talking about something in the kitchen, and my middle son, Raja, he says, well, Dad won't get mad. That was old Dad. Chill Dad doesn't get upset or something like that. And at first I was pretty happy with him. Like, oh wow, I have got a lot more emotional control and my children are noticing. But then part of me was like, oh my gosh, what was I doing before that they're noticing such a change? We look at what we can do in the future, and I don't beat myself up over the past. I did things in the past that I've learned from. I used to drink too much. I don't do that anymore. I used to eat too much. I was 50 pounds heavier. I used to have insomnia and wake up many times at night. If I woke up at 2 in the morning, I would just go, oh no, that's it. Now I'm going to be exhausted all day. I went from that to sleeping like a rock. I get up early. I hit the ground running. I'm really motivated to get other people to realize that they are creating their realities with their thoughts. It happened for me, and I've helped so many people. I just want to keep spreading the word. That's why I was so excited to get invited on a podcast, because I want other people to hear this. And whether they reach out to me or they reach out to you or to anybody that resonates with them, sometimes that's all you need, because you have it inside you to do. You just need someone else to perhaps help you shine a light on. What's different with me and a lot of people is a lot of people went to traditional counseling and therapists to try and get over some of their anxiety and figure out where their addiction issues were coming from. And I mean, in the job that I was doing, you kind of got blackballed if you did that. So it just wasn't really, I didn't feel like it was an option. I just felt like I had to keep going and just figure it out. So for me, it all happened really quickly. I just sat in this room and we would discuss these things and closed your eyes and thought about stuff. I didn't buy it at first. I was like, there's no way that this is actually going to work. And then the proof was in the pudding. And then I did my master level training. And that's when I just kept going and did my trainer's training.
We were talking about maybe giving us an example of the peripheral hypnosis.
So this is a fantastic way of exiting your fight or flight response, even if you're in partial fight or flight. So let's talk about fight or flight, first of all. It's a defense mechanism so that you can actually either fight or flee and to save your life. It's like the reptilian part of your brain takes over. The amygdala fires. So in anger management, they refer to it as if this is the amygdala, and then it's like you've flipped your lid. You flipped your lid means that your amygdala is now active. So we have to bring your lid back down. And bringing the lid back down is like bringing the blood flow back to the human part of your brain, which is your neocortex, so you can think rationally. Because when we are in fight or flight, we have very limited behavioral flexibility. We say things we shouldn't say, we do things we shouldn't do. And then sometimes afterwards we say, oh, why did I say that? Well, you said it because it was the best option you had available in the moment, because the rational part of your brain was offline. It's like unplugging your modem or slowing down the speed to 10% of what you normally have and then wondering why you can't access everything on the internet. You got to have that plugged in and working. So this is a fantastic way of bringing yourself into a calm state where you access your parasympathetic nervous system, and then you get more behavioral flexibility. The way to do this is to move your body physiologically in some way first so that your thoughts follow. I believe that what a lot of people think is that if they control their thoughts, well, then their body will calm down, which is true. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm saying that it's not always the fastest way, though. Let's do this little exercise before we do the peripheral vision exercise. And anybody who's watching, you can do this. And if you're driving, maybe don't.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, if you're driving or you're operating heavy equipment, please do not do this or any of the stuff that we're going to do probably for the rest of this time together. So if you sit and you just kind of put your face down, pointing to the ground, and then you try to feel like your cheeks are a little bit heavy, and you look down at the ground and you slump your shoulders forward and you do not change your breathing pattern, just leave it as it is without changing anything, feel really happy and confident right now. You notice that it's like your body wants to do something different in order to follow those instructions. Now imagine this. Imagine if you put your shoulders back and your back straight and you smile, and then you look straight ahead and maybe a little bit up, maybe up into the top corner of the room you're in or up at the ceiling. And then you smile and you pretend that you're not actually forcing the smile, that it's real. Convince yourself that that's the case. Maintain this. Don't change your breathing pattern or anything about your physiology. Feel sad right now. You see, you can do it. Sure, you can, but you have to change your physiology. It becomes challenging. So this is why I say if you can manipulate how you feel physiologically, you will control what's going on up here. You will literally alter your emotional state. One of the things that I learned years ago, this was actually at police college, we did this simulation where there was a screen in front of us and then a screen on either side, and there was something going on and we had to click on these buttons, and we had to click every time we saw something on the side screens. So they would flash up like there was a boy in a red tricycle, and then on this side there was children playing skipping rope, and the screen in front of us was what situation we were dealing with, and it was a car we were following in a subdivision. Every one of us got 100%. I see the boy in the tricycle, I see the children skipping. The second time we did it, a bad guy gets out of the car and starts shooting at us. More than half the people missed a lot of stuff. I missed the boy in the red tricycle. I was convinced he wasn't there. When they played it a second time and they said, okay, now you know what's going to happen. Someone's going to get out of the car and start shooting at you. Pay attention to your peripheral vision. All that stuff that was there the first time was also there the second time. Why didn't we see it? Because we went into partial fight or flight mode, even though we knew that we were not in danger. And this is because our brain doesn't know the difference between something that's imagined vividly, an experience that we buy into, or something that's actually happening. It's why we can go to a sad movie and cry, or why we can watch a horror movie and our heart pounds out of our chest. So this happens because when we're in fight or flight, we go into tunnel vision, foveal vision, because our brain is saying we have to pay attention to whatever is dangerous right in front of us. And if you're not paying attention to it, then it could take your life. You become super focused on things that are dangerous. Think about people who create panic attacks and that have high levels of anxiety. They become fixated on that thing that scares them. And because they're so fixated on it, they find other things to be scared of. And before you know it, they fill their head with internal representations of all the catastrophic things that may happen, most of which will not. And then that can cause them to have a panic attack. So this is a very useful exercise for anybody that wants to create more behavioral flexibility. Definitely a fantastic exercise for somebody who suffers from anxiety, because you cannot feel anxiety when you're in this state. It puts you into a state of true presence. And the default setting for being truly present is always positivity. Because if we're afraid of something, see, fear and anxiety are not the same. If you're afraid of something, it's because something bad's happening right now, and that fear could save your life because you might realize that, oh no, I better get out of this situation. That's not what anxiety is, though. Anxiety is you engaging in your mind with a future and then painting a negative picture that's fearful in the future. That's what anxiety is. Sadness is doing the same thing, but only you're focusing on the negative stuff from your past. When you are truly in periphery, you are present. When you are truly present, you cannot connect with the things that you must connect with to create negative emotion unless something negative is happening right now. And if we look back over the course of our lives, what we'll find is that those moments are few and far between, that something bad is happening right now. Not saying it can't happen, not saying it won't happen. I'm saying it's pretty rare. So if in everyday life you just get really, really good at bringing yourself to the present moment, you will spend a lot more time in positivity. You will have lower cortisol levels. You will give your adrenal glands a break, right? So you won't be headed down that path of potential adrenal fatigue. And then you'll sleep better, and then you'll be happier, and then you'll vibrate at a higher frequency, and then you'll have a lot more friends because people would want to be around you. Nobody wants to be around that person, that low vibe person that brings all their baggage with them everywhere they go, right? That's the pre-frame. Now let's do it. So if you're watching this on recording, pause this until you can get someplace where you can have total privacy. And it would be good if you're outside. If you're not outside, maybe looking out a window, but it's not necessary. Okay, so let's do this. Feet apart, hands apart, and just look straight ahead. And as you do that, tilt your eyes up and focus on a spot on the ceiling, or maybe where the wall meets the ceiling. And let's take a 4-second breath in now. Hold it for 4. Let it go for 6. One more time, inhale. Hold. Let it go. Just settle into a pattern of breathing as you focus on that spot in a lazy kind of a way, almost as though you're looking right through that spot, other spots on either side of it. No need to move your eyes because you have peripheral vision. In fact, your periphery starts to become stronger as you start to notice that the things in your peripheral vision, above, below, to the left, to the right, are somehow more pronounced now. Notice how you can pay so much attention to them that it's as though you are spreading your vision all the way to the extremes, kind of like you're trying to wrap your vision right around your head, as though if there were a tennis ball floating behind your head, that you could see it, or at least make an attempt, all the way into your periphery. And as you do this, notice that here in this time and space, you can hear sounds. In fact, some of the sounds that you hear are louder now than they were just a moment ago. Or perhaps there are sounds that you couldn't hear before, but now you can. Also, imagine hearing sounds that are occurring, but they're too far away. That's why you can't hear them. They are occurring though, and you know that they're occurring. You could use your imagination to pretend that you can hear those sounds. Maybe the sound of a dog barking. Maybe the sound of a baby crying. And now feel the feeling of your hands. Notice the temperature of the air on your exposed skin. The feeling of your tongue in your mouth as it touches your teeth. Perhaps you could separate your jaw slightly and let your lower jaw hang heavy, dropping you into a level of relaxation that's twice as deep. And now go all the way out into your periphery again, paying attention to everything in your peripheral vision. Try to feel any negative emotion now. Try to feel any anxiety or sadness or frustration or jealousy or resentment. Try to feel anything negative now. You may find the more deeply you go into this state that the more difficult it is to feel anything at all besides positive emotion. And now let's unpack this. So you can just come back to the room.
Whoa.
How was that for you? How did you
Felt
feel?
really nice. That was very relaxing. It was interesting when I was focused on the peripheral vision. I knew I had things that I could pull up that were negative. I have a couple of frustrations right now I was ready and I couldn't feel them.
You could bring up the event. It was vivid for you.
Correct.
You could not feel the emotion. Okay, good.
Correct.
Good.
I'm still melting in the chair.
That can happen.
Does this mean that if you are heading into a situation that is going to be stressful for you, do this as an exercise prior to entering that stressful situation?
Absolutely. And what happens over time is it becomes natural, it becomes reflexive, and then it just happens. Mm-hmm. And then you go in and out of it. I go in and out of this all the time. I was deeply into this state right before this podcast started, and I'm in and out of it the entire time. And every once in a while, my mind will tell me that you need to go back into periphery. It gives me more access to all of the things that I want to say. The right words will show up for me, the right ideas. When you ask me a question, the odds of me later on going, why did I not say this? It can happen. It does happen. The odds of that happening will be less though. Why? Because I'm totally online. So the information that I have access to it. If I didn't, and I was just in foveal vision And, oh, people are going to watch this and they're going to judge me. And I hope I say these things correctly. And what if I said something wrong? Oh, no, this is scary. Then when you ask me questions, I'm not likely going to be able to give you answers that I'm happy with. I feel really good about everything that I've done and said so far. I'm in periphery, though. This is a skill. It's something that I believe is good to develop, and it only happens through repetition and practice. Let me talk for a moment about this idea of looking up. You don't always have to, once you get good at this, you don't have to do it in exactly the way that I described. The breathing is always a good idea because when we're in an anxious state, our breathing becomes shallow. It's the easiest way to manipulate our physiology. That's why people always are talking about breathing. That's why breathing exercises and breath work, and it all works. It's a good idea to incorporate that in right at the very beginning. If you're a very anxious person, 2 times doing that breathing of 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, and 6 out might not be enough. You might have to do it 8 or 10 times. You just pay attention to your body. And then when you just go into the periphery, like I'm in total peripheral vision right now. Do I seem like I'm spaced out or do I seem like I'm very present?
Very present.
Yeah. So if you're doing a talk in the boardroom, you have to present perhaps some information to your colleagues or your subordinates. If you can be in total peripheral vision when you're in that room and you're seeing everything, not just the people here, but also the walls, and you can see that person that just walked in with a coffee, and you can look out the window and see the cars that are driving by, you're just aware of them. You'll be far more present in that room. You will come across as far more confident. Why? Because you are. Why are you? Because you're present. Because you're not engaged with all the thoughts in your mind that tell you that maybe you're not good enough or that people are judging you. Am I wearing the right clothes? They're giggling over there. They're probably laughing at something I said. This is scary. Nothing scary when you're present because we create these fears. The fear of judgment is something we create. And I'm not suggesting that I have no fear of judgment. I'm a human being. I just know that I can make it go away when it doesn't serve me for those thoughts to be there. And that's a skill that anybody can learn.
Yeah.
You have to practice it though. All of this stuff comes with practice, repetition. You find something that works, do it over and over and over again until it's unconscious.
Wow. Interesting. Well, so people who have to present and it's not their go-to, you're suggesting that this would be their exercise going into it, but not only prior, but during. That's fascinating. What would you say to somebody that has a speech, for example, that they're memorizing? And so then maybe they're thinking about the words that are going to come out, and then they're also in their peripheral vision. Is that too many things for your brain to do at once?
The first thing I would say if somebody's memorizing a speech is don't memorize a speech. you know. And I realize that if you're not speaking a lot and you're called upon, one time that you have to do a speech, maybe that's going to make it easier for you. Somebody who has to give a speech at a wedding, that type of a thing. Yeah, I can understand why they might just say, no, 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 I'm not going to go up. I'm going to have to memorize it. What I would say is then in that circumstance, just have a piece of paper so that you can read off of it. If you forget something, stay in periphery. If you have it memorized and you're in periphery, what I would say is the odds of you actually remembering what to say are going to be greater. Yeah, so you're doing both. You have it memorized and you stay in periphery. The other thing that would happen is if you have it memorized, but then you draw a blank, the odds of you panicking are less. Why? Because on a scale of 0 to 10 on the panic scale, you're at 0. You have a lot more flexibility and an ability to recover. The odds of you saying, well, I don't remember what to say next, but I'm just going to say this because it sounds pretty good and nobody's going to know that I'm not sticking to my speech are good because you're at 0. But if you go into it at 4 and then you draw a blank, boom, now you're at 7. Now your physiology is not cooperating with you. The odds of you being able to switch gears and start saying something different, not very good. You'll be like what I did at police college. You'll just go, okay, I can't do this. And then you'll panic and you'll go sit down and be embarrassed. So definitely the more present you can become, the more flexibility you will have. It's really about one of the presuppositions, a linguistic assumption of NLP is the person with the most behavioral flexibility controls the outcome. How do you become the person with the most behavioral flexibility? Have the greatest amount of emotional control. It's about controlling your emotions.
That's great. I think we could all benefit from controlling our emotions. If you are in a one-to-one situation with a difficult personality, maybe it's your boss or a coworker or a family member, how does changing your behavior affect the dynamic? You know, people who say, well, I'm stuck talking to person A and person A always does X, Y, and Z. How does this play into dealing
Yeah.
with those kind of situations?
It reminds me of another presupposition of NLP. And a presupposition is just something, it's a linguistic assumption. Like the one that most people are familiar with is the customer's always right. It's something that you presuppose when you're in retail. Doesn't necessarily mean the customer's always right. It means that you're likely going to have a more successful retail operation if you adopt that as being true. That's really a presupposition. The presupposition that comes to mind based on your question is the presupposition that says the meaning of the communication is the response you get. So if I have a communication with you and I don't like what you're saying and you're resisting me and you're getting aggressive with me and you're being nasty to me, if I adopt this way of thinking that you're only doing that because of my communication, in other words, I'm creating everything, then what I do is I stand a chance of changing the situation by taking responsibility for how I contributed to it, instead of pointing the finger at you and saying that you're just difficult and that nobody, if I have a problem with somebody at my job, like nobody likes John, John's always difficult. And John's this and John's that. It's my attempt at changing John's behavior. The only person I have control over is me. That's why that's such a powerful presupposition, is if I just take responsibility and say, John's behaving this way and responding to me in this way because of what I'm saying or doing or how I'm communicating. So therefore, I must change my communication and then measure how John responds. And if it doesn't work, then I change it again. If it doesn't work, I change it again. And I mean, there's some linguistic tools that we could use here. We don't have time to get into the details of it, but at a really high level, that's what it is. And the number of people that I've had come back to me and say, I cannot believe the difference. It's unbelievable simply by me changing my own behavior. I'll give you a quick story. I have a lady that I'm working with right now. I do some work at a local weight loss center where there's a bunch of people that are in it. And one of the ladies that's in it says that her husband thinks that hypnosis is all fake and all this self-help stuff. And she goes, he always makes me feel bad when I leave to come to these meetings. That's a distortion, right? Cause and effect. No other human being can make you feel a certain way. You choose to respond in a certain way. So I talked to her and I said, listen, it's just how you're communicating. It's not your husband, it's you. And so she came and she did a little session with me and I taught her some of the things to say. She was blown away. The next session we had at the weight loss center, she came in and she said, it was unbelievable. Her husband was making his usual remarks as she's going to leave. And she just used some of the language patterns that I had taught her. And in a nutshell, what she said was that, I'm glad that you kind of have this view because life would be pretty boring if I was married to a male version of myself. Like I think this stuff is great. I've lost 19 pounds already. I feel wonderful. We go there, we have fun, we laugh. It's awesome. And I mean, it would be cool if you thought it was awesome, but the fact that you think it's ridiculous, but meanwhile, I'm getting such value from it, just tells me that that's what makes our relationship interesting. Think of how boring it would be if we were both the exact same person. She said, I felt like I hypnotized him. He was just sitting there. He didn't know what to say. She goes, all these years we've been married, I've never seen him like not know what to say. And he was just sitting there looking at me. And I said, I'll see you in a couple hours. It was great. But she took responsibility instead of pointing the finger at him. Why don't you support me? Why don't you agree? Why do you say these things to me? No. I said, you got to look in the mirror and look at yourself and ask yourself, how are you behaving to create that response in him? As soon as she did that, she got a very different response from him.
That's a beautiful lesson of self-responsibility that might be lacking in, the world today. I can only speak to my American experience. The two of you are Canadian, so perhaps it's different up there, but I think that's a valuable lesson for all of us to take.
I think it's more similar than maybe you realize.
And with that, we get to our silly subconscious question. This is designed to get your first answer that comes to mind, not for you to contemplate
Okay.
for too long. And it's just for fun.
Okay.
And our question for you, Surinder, today is, if you bought a boat, what would you name it and why?
Fun, because I have a boat, and when we take the kids out and they go tubing and bring their friends along, it's fun.
That's the name of the boat,
Awesome.
is fun.
So,
Love it.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Okay. I asked you the one thing you already have.
well, so I don't. It's not actually
okay.
named,
Oh, there
so we
you
don't
go.
have a name for it. Yeah,
Nice.
it's just that when you said it, I thought about the boat. I thought, yeah, it's fun. That's why
Love
we
it.
still have it, because it's fun.
Excellent.
And the other question I would like to ask is, what is your beyond? What is something about Surinder that we may not know about that sparks you up?
I play the drums. Well, I haven't played drums for many years, but it's a funny story. Recently, I was playing pickleball, and I could hear a band playing in this building that we play pickleball in. So I went over and I asked them if I could sit in for a song, and it all came back to me. And I haven't played drums in probably 6 or 7 years, but I played when I was 12 years old, and then on and off until my mid 30s. And now on Friday, I'm actually going to sit in with a friend of mine who plays guitar, and he teaches. The mental health center brings a bunch of people in, and they teach them how to sing and play guitars and stuff. And they don't have a drummer, so I'm going to be sitting in with them on
Fun.
tomorrow.
Fantastic.
So there,
Lucky them.
yeah.
Who's your favorite band?
I was a huge Kiss fan since I was a kid. Saw them first time when I was 11 years old. I've seen them 26
Nice.
times, I think, 24 maybe. Met Gene Simmons once, met Paul Stanley twice. Saw Paul Stanley when he was in the Phantom of the Opera here in Toronto. And yeah, but it was more like, I liked their music, but it was more that they captured our imagination when we were children, because they had the mask, the makeup, and nobody knew who they were. And they were like superheroes to
I
us.
just had a vision of you
So,
with
yeah.
all the makeup on as soon as you said Kiss. Maybe the next training.
Maybe.
Nice. Well, please let our viewers know where they can find you.
Yes, yeah, for sure. So my website is surindersgill.com. So SURINDERSGILL.com. I do have a YouTube channel as well. If you just punch in Surinder Gill Hypnosis, you'll see there's many, many videos of people that I've helped with a variety of things over the years. There's some instructional stuff. There's clips of me teaching NLP trainings that I've put on YouTube as well. That's all free. And I actually have a practitioner training coming up in Ottawa, May 13th to the 18th of 2025. If anybody's interested, I'd be more than happy to hop on a call with you and answer all of your questions
Excellent.
about that.
Great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you so much
yeah.
for being here. That was just wonderful.
Yes.
And with that, what do we always
No, I
say,
love
Jen?
Peace
Peace out.
out.
it. Yeah, peace out.